Witness throughout the week amidst all this talk that is taking center stage in the country in relation to politics coming from a Friday that got the Finance Act given a brakes, that is at the level of the High Court. And it's basically the conversation that we're having. Remember, the law was supposed to begin being effected from the 1st of July, that is on Saturday. Of course, we have witnessed some of them, including the question of the fuel, taking that shape of the 16%. But just how far will it go is one of the conversations that we'll be having this morning, even as the president lifts the 6-year ban that is on anti-logging. And we'll be getting into that conversation, or perhaps on logging, and we'll be getting into that conversation later on alongside the gentleman that I'll be having. And being a Monday, there's going to be that moment of sports just to reminisce on what has played out over the weekend sporting wise, and of course also to get to understand what to expect for the better part of the week. This and much more. Keep it right here. We have the papers. We also have the news stories that we have prepared, and we'll be looking at all this right here. Karibu sana. The hashtag is Morning Cafe at Linda_Alela TV47 KA. This is Morning Cafe. It begins right away, and my name is Linda Alela. Walk with me as we take a look at these stories, and we first begin by looking at what the papers detail this morning. Briefly, just on what is captured on the front page, we have, yes, this one is Malala in cabinet and little men whose records become law, and questions have lingered as to the legality of incorporating the likes of Malala, the likes of Harriet Chegai, the likes of David Ndii, and not forgetting Monica Juma, to sit in the conversation at the level of Parliament, perhaps, or at the level of the cabinet. Perhaps one would say, well, with Monica Juma as well as Harriet Chegai, it would be okay, because during the mentioning of the CSs, also their names were mentioned. But then again, question is as to whether then the Secretary General of UDA should as well sit in that space of cabinet, and of what importance would that be in terms of making sure that the Ruto government then does what is enshrined in their manifesto, and of course for the best of the people of the nation. And what does it mean also in terms of the law as to what the Constitution dictates? As many would argue, well, this is against the Constitution, as within the Constitution it is said that cabinet sittings should incorporate at least 25 members, including the president and his deputy. Will this be a breach of the law, coming to the history of what played out with Uhuru Kenyatta's reign and the incorporation of the then, boss of MNMS, that is Badi? Of course, this conversation is ongoing, and we'll be getting to understand some more in relation to that. Also, as some would say, this should be challenged in court. And of course, we're waiting to see what the court will, have to declare in relation to that. And of course, what next for Mali after UN pullout? Interesting conversation in relation to this conversation of just having Africans, sitting at the top of all these organizations, or so to speak, or these bodies that unite the nations together. Remember, it's not just about Malawi, but basically what we have even witnessed at the level of East Africa. Tanzania having a bit of an issue as to whether they should be seated at the East African Community or SADC. We have had conversations as to whether Morocco should be incorporated back, which they did, at the African Union or not. Remember the tussle in relation to that, and so much more. So most of the times you'll find that states are struggling to sit in specific bodies that speak to their interests and the interest of other nations. And so, being a developing story, we will certainly be looking forward to see what next for Malawi. Away from it, Kip Kemboi Jebet bagged 7 billion for marathon win. That is in the world of sports. We'll be getting more details later on with, of course, Dennis and the others that he will be having this morning. And in the intrigues of missing school reform report, this is quite unfortunate, and of course empty promises, if you'd want to call them that way. Task Force on Education Reforms was to hand over its final report 3 weeks ago, but the promises to make it public have not been made, and this has raised doubts on the recommendations the 49-member team could have made. A story captured on page 4, and we'll be looking to see whether this will be presented to the people of Kenya and what it would mean amidst all the questions as to the recommendations that they had proposed. Away from it, families come to terms with Londiani tragedy, and we here at TV47 would wish to pass our messages of condolences to the family and friends of those those ones that lost their loved ones, but of importance to also wish quick recovery to those ones that are still battling at the level of the hospitals. Certainly, it was a dark weekend for the people of Kenya. This as fuel prices, headache for students and parents. And we're talking about matatu operators have raised their fares after the energy regulator hiked the pump prices, spelling doom for parents who have to dig deeper to take their students back to school. That is also a conversation that is ongoing here as we seek to understand whether adjustments will be made in relation to that declaration by Justice Thande that is on Friday upon this petition that was presented by Busia Senator Okiya Omtata. Away from it, Londiani accident traders defy order to vacate roadside market. That is a story captured on page 2, and that declaration by the government that we will not have most of these traders as well, proceeding with their businesses close to the roads, that adjustments should be made countrywide. But well, these ones that say they are dependent on these spaces for their livelihoods would want to counter the same. What would this mean? A story captured on page 2, a developing one, and we'll certainly be seeking to see how it will be followed on. Last moments of Kenyan woman who was murdered alongside her Nigerian lover. That is a story that is expounded on page 3, and it's quite an unfortunate report. And perhaps it gets into, speaking to the last moments, as always the norm, you will always want to understand what was the last words for the people, that you have lost at this very point. It's a developing story, and we'll be following up closely as well to get updates on the same. Youth exodus and passport delays, a nightmare for many Kenyans seeking to travel out of the country. Well, the greener pastures, or the question of unemployment, as you'd want to call it, and the tough living conditions have driven many young people to the edge. And this story speaks to just how much they now want out, and the long-winding queues at the passport centers as they try to get, this. And of course, it's happening across the country. All the Huduma centers, as well as the airport, are testaments to this. And then the youth are flying out to pursue their dreams, some for school, as they would want to say, some in search of greener pastures, better jobs and all that. And the government is prodding them on this. And story captured on page 6 and page 7. Remember the other time they were saying that, well, we're not able to print the passports in the country for obvious reasons that they had indicated, and the processing crisis. They are talking about there's a backlog of about 70,000 passports, and the immigration department can only process 700 passports in a day. And we're talking about a steep increase. Passports processed and issued increased by 55.9% to 426,137. That is in 2022. And U.S. green card official data from United States Department, that is, shows that we have about 173,218 Kenyans applied for this. That is 2022 diversity visa lottery. And also we're looking at foreign jobs, where President William Ruto has secured over 400,000 job opportunities for Kenyans in Germany and Saudi Arabia. And finally, on the question of unemployment, over 3.12 million Kenyans were unemployed in 2022. This is according to data presented by the KNBS. What does this mean? And just how best can we address this question? Well, it's certainly at a glance, and we'll be looking forward to get updates on the same. It's a developing story as well. Inside, Ruto plan to claw into Raila's Nyanza turf. Interesting times. President William Ruto is on an override to make inroads into Azimio leader Raila Odinga's Nyanza backyard, and that, was set to visit the region this Saturday, barely a week after the former premier hosted a 2-day mega event. That is to secure his turf. And yes, it will be interesting to watch just how the president successfully does this, if he is going to be successful. But we've also witnessed, some inroads that he's made through his CSs, the likes of, as many would want to argue, Eliud Owalo, just to soften the hearts of the people of Nyanza. But just how far can he go with this, especially at this point in time, where most of the Kenyans sort of feel like they've been shortchanged amidst the difficulties, the question of survival. And on the front page of the People Daily, Ruto's CASs to no fate today, and we'll be following to see what plays out in relation to this judgment. It is the day of judgment at the level of the High Court, as you can evidently see, rule on whether 50 appointees will take up their lucrative jobs or they will be sent packing after the LSK and other petitioners questioned legality of the appointments. We can only wait to see what plays out at this level. The holding sword of the justice. We're talking about Justice Kanyi Kimondo, Justice Ongundi Hedwing, as well as Justice Alim Al-Nasir. And we'll be giving you updates on this. We'll have our reporters on ground following up on the same, and we'll certainly be here to update you accordingly. Tributes pour in for writer-activist Miss Harry, and of course we as well here say we pass our condolences to the friends and family, and also those ones that were lovers of the writers, articles and writers' pieces. Pain, tears as Londiani crash victims identified as well. That is over 52 people killed in one of Kenya's worst accidents this year. Relatives have identified 37. It's a developing story as well. We'll be here to make sure that you are updated in relation to that, and as well in the sporting action, Dennis will update you some more on the Marathon Champions Day of Glory that has been captured on the back page of the People Daily. Now allow us to pick some of these stories that have been worked on by my team as we update you some more, and we'll also be picking some of them to get into the beat of the stories. And here we are. We start off in Kericho, and the Kericho County government has deployed about enforcement of officers to forcefully remove roadside traders along the Kericho-Leten highway. This follows the tragic accident on Londiani Road that has claimed 50 people and counting, as a majority of casualties are said to be hawkers who operated by the roadside.
This was the situation at the Kericho-Leten highway. Enforcement officers from the county forcefully removing roadside traders, relocating them to a designated marketplace. The directive by the area county governor Eric Mutai came hours after the tragic Londiani accident that claimed tens of lives. Traders have to relocate to safe areas, with the devolved unit setting aside a designated open-air market for the vendors.
Tumeshukuru sana serikali kututoa kwa barabara, na vile wamekuja na wakatutoa kweli, nimeshukuru pia raia, maana wamekubali kutoka kwa barabara. Unaona sasa vile hii soko barabara sasa hakuna mtu, ni vile wamekubali kutoka. Na uzuri tunarudisha asante, sababu serikali pia wametununulia shamba huko. Kuna soko yetu tulikuwa tumetengewa huko, na ndio sasa wamehamia huko.
Maneno ya kuuzia kwa barabara ni ngumu. Ni heri tuende kwa barabara. Barabara imeleta ajali mingi sana. Hata nimeshukuru serikali yetu imekuingiza ndani hapa. Soko inataka ikue kiwanja, ikue ndani ya kiwanja, takani ikue kwa barabara. Hapo ndio tunaona poa hapo. Hapo mmesaidia sisi. Maneno barabara kweli, magari inakuja spidi. Ujui ajali inatokea wapi? Hakuna bari utajekinga.
Even though some traders complied, others detested the county's decision, urging the governor to provide a conducive environment for traders to operate in.
Ndio unadhani kama sio hii ajali ilitoka juzi Londiani Junction, huenda tungehamishwa kwa hii soko. So tunalia kwa sababu ametuhamisha bila soko, bila kujipanga pale kwa soko juu tunapelekwa. Maana tuna choo ya kujisaidia pale juu. Kando na hiyo tena tuko na shida tena. Wale wametupeleka pia, tumepelekwa mahali kando kabisa, kulingana hapo tulikuwa vizuri, kwa katikati tulikuwa mzuri kwa sababu tulikuwa na maduka, wakati mvua inanyesha tungeweza kujigama pale.
Hii watu ya Kanjo wakaiti sisi ya kwamba barabara itaundwa hapa. Yenyewe hata nyinyi mkiangalia kiwanja ni kubwa. Maturity hakuna, manyumba hakuna. Vitu iko hapa ni mingi. Mvua ikinyesha kama saa hii, hakuna mahali mtu anaweza chungulia mizigo yako, na mizigo ikienda hakuna mwenye anaenda kuitisa. Kimeenda. Kwa hivyo saiti manyumba na matoilet.
The death toll in the tragic Londiani accident now stands at 53, with the management of Londiani Sub-County Hospital contemplating on how to preserve bodies of victims as they await identification. The hospital morgue cannot accommodate more than 20 bodies. Zainab Mohammed, T47.
And leaders drawn from Turkana County have condemned the killing of one person was allegedly killed in KWS area along Lodwar Kitale Highway on Friday evening, led by Governor Jeremiah Lomukurai. Area leaders, among them Senator James Lomenenius. The leaders called on the Interior Cabinet to Secretary, that is CS Secretary Kithure Kindiki, to take action on security matters of the area and calling for the transfer of some security officers.
Sisi tunashindwa kwa nini mifugo ya Pokot zinakuja kugrace Turkana, na hata baada ya kuachilia wa grace ni kuua watu na kupiga risasi abiria wanaosafiri wenye hawana neno. Sisi tunataka kuomba Waziri Kindiki, tunataka kuomba serikali kuu kupitia Your Excellency William Samoei Ruto. Ulituambia kila siku kwamba hii mambo ya cattle rustling itaisha, mpende msipende. Sasa sio cattle rustling saa hii, imekuwa ni kupiga risasi wasafiri wanaosafiri bila neno.
Wameua officers ya national, wamemaliza. Hata wamekuja kuwa ya county, wamemaliza. Wameenda hata kwa village. Sasa hapana. Ili kwa serikali yetu huyo mtu atolewe, huyo mkubwa wa S2 atolewe hapa, kwa sababu anaongea na wahalifu wakati KDF wanapiga wahalifu. Huyo jamani anakuja katikati ya town na kucomplain. Kwa nini KDF wasiende kupigana na Somalia? Kwa nini wasiende kupigana na Sudan? Kwa nini wasiende kupigana na GA kutoka Uganda? Kwa nini wanapiga Pokot? Turkana County hawana shida na kabila lolote.
West Pokot County Government, in collaboration with E4 Impact Foundation and Northern Ridgeland Trust Farming Cooperative, have embarked on sensitizing West Pokot residents to embrace farming as one way of bringing the residents together due to increasing insecurity issues linked to prolonged cattle rustling between neighboring communities. The stakeholders have encouraged formation of farming groups between the county farmers, which will provide, of course, will be provided with the farm inputs at subsidized prices so as to boost agriculture in the region. Take that story later, but on this one, parents whose children are set to join various institutions of higher learning in Canada through the county government of Uasin Gishu Education Overseas program have called on residents to stop politicizing the program led by their chairperson Kiprono Keitani as a session with the press in Eldoret, Uasin Gishu County. They say a majority of the critics were people who do not want to be informed about the arrangements before students join the universities abroad, as Daniel Kehoro details.
Parents participating in Uasin Gishu Education Overseas program, which enables their children to study in various Canadian institutions of higher learning, are appealing to public to refrain from politicizing the initiative. Concerns have arisen regarding certain individual apparent attention to introduce self-service politics and tarnish the program through section of the media.
Na tumekuja, tumeongea, tumefanya mkutano mzuri na kuna vile ambavyo tumeelewana. Na katika ile hali ya kuelewana, tumeelewana ya kwamba wanafunzi wetu waende Canada. Lakini sisi tunajua ya kwamba mpango wetu ya Canada inaendelea na inaendelea vizuri sana. Hatuna shida yoyote.
During a press conference in Eldoret, the parents, led by their chairman Kiprono Keitani and Simeon Mitei, expressed that most of the program critics are informed individuals who prefer not to acquaint themselves with the program details prior to their children enrollment in foreign universities.
Some of the parents who are complaining ni watu tayari, I know some of them, tayari wamejitoa kwa hii program. Already they have gone to other universities in Australia and other parts of the world. So they just want to spoil this program for these patient parents. We have been very patient enough and we really support it.
The parents urged dissatisfied individuals to avoid spreading falsehood and speaking negative about the program. Instead, they encourage them to seek clarification from the office of Uasin Gishu Deputy Governor, who oversees the program implementation.
Waongoje, na najua county government wako na ile plan ambayo watajua ni jinsi gani wataweza kusaidiwa, na nataka kusema kwamba kwa wale ambao wanafikiria wamewachwa nyuma, Deputy Governor hako kwa ofisi kila Thursday na anaona amechukua hiyo jukumu ili aweze kuhudumia wale wale wanaenda ng'ambo.
Furthermore, the parents underscored the program's significant value in providing numerous students with valuable opportunity. They stressed the importance of allowing the county government of Uasin Gishu to carry out the necessary procedure seamlessly and effectively.
And if there was some problem earlier on with Finland and other programs, they have already been rectified, because a journey is a learning process.
Daniel Kihoro reporting for TV47, Nairobi.
And while farmers have been laughing all the way to the bank from the booming avocado business, an emerging trend of organized theft is threatening the newly found gold due to infiltration of the sector by cartels. Gatundu avocado farmers now counting huge losses as thieves invade farms illegally, harvest fruits for sale to brokers. Andrin Kilemi reports.
Avocado farmers from Gatundu North constituency in Kiambu County are counting huge losses after thieves began raiding their farms, illegally harvesting the fruits. The thieves are reported to be invading the farms in the dead of the night and harvesting the fruits for sale to middlemen who buy them at throwaway prices, leaving the farmers with nothing to sell.
Sisi usiku aturaragi. Waizi. Avocado wanatuchokesa kabisa. Usiku tunarara tukihahuka. Tunarara atuoni usigisi. Tukisikia panya huko kwa kabati nywe. Tunastuka, tunafikiria ile avocado inakuja kusukuliwa.
Farmers decry that the crime is being executed by young boys from various villages who get up to 3 shillings per piece of avocado sold to middlemen, as compared to between 10 to 20 shillings that they make when they sell the fruits to exporters who buy at their respective farms.
And even apart from avocado, tuko na macadamia. Na hata macadamia wao wenyewe tena wanaingia na kushuna usiku. Wengine ni mchana. Na kitu very funny enough, ukimkuta akiwa ameweka kwa chondo au kwa kikapu ile ambaye yeye mwenyewe anachukua, hata mfukuze namna gani anaenda naye.
Farmers lamented that organized gangs who are radically penetrating the lucrative avocado business in the region, stealing hundreds of thousands worth of fruits, could plunge them into poverty, as they entirely rely on the fruit for their livelihoods.
Wizi wa hii tunda la parachichi umeongezeka sana. Sasa mimi ningeomba serikali ihakikisha ya kwamba kuna sheria ambazo zinalinda mkulima. Tumeona ya kwamba kuna cartels ambao wako kwa kahawa, wako kwa majani chai. Sasa hao makartels sasa wameanza kurudi kwa hii tunda la parachichi ambalo liko na pesa mingi sana. Kwa hivyo kutengenezwa sheria ambazo wale ambao wanafanya hii biashara wamepewa vyeti ambazo zinaonyesha ya kwamba hao ndio harisi ambao wakununua hii tunda la parachichi. Pia ambao wanakuja wako na vibanda ambao wameweka kwa shopping. Kila shopping center sahi unapata kuna kasenta ambao kuna ule ambaye ananunua hiyo parachichi. Tunauliza wale ambao ni viongozi ama wale ambao ni chiefs na dio na DCC wachukue sheria, waseme ya kwamba zile vibanda ambazo ziko kwa shopping center zote zimefungwa, zihakikishwe ya kwamba wale ambao wanafanya hii biashara wanaenda kwa mkulima, wananunua hiyo tunda kwa mti, si ati wanaletewa, wawe wananunua ambapo kwenye mkulima ako.
Farmers at the same time called on the government to enact laws that will stop brokers from collapsing the sector that millions of farmers rely on for economic survival. Andrin Kilemi, TV47.
Now, members of Kirinyaga County Assembly have assured the over 20,000 people living in the disputed 17,000 acres of the disputed South Ngariama Ranch in Mwea that they will not be evicted from the land. Led by Majority Leader Mureithi Kibinga, the MCS said that the allotment letters given to the residents by the defunct Kirinyaga County Council that is legally binding, and as such, the county will issue them with the title deeds.
Na kumekuwa na fununu mingi kwamba sisi MCAs ni sisi hatutaki watu wapewe title deeds, na ni sisi tunataka kutoa watu kwa mashamba yao. tunataka kuhakikishia watu wa South Ngariema kwamba sisi kama county government ya Kirinyaga tuna mpango wale watu wapate title deeds zao, na ndio tunapanga wiki ijayo tutakuwa na kikao watu waelezewe mambo ya adjudication process vile koti iliamua, ili watu wasipewe mambo mingi isiyo ya ukweli na isiyo wasaidia.
Ile ingine wale wanasema adjudication ni kuja kutoa watu, hakuna. Ile kitu mimi naelewa ni kwamba wale maofisa wa serikali kuu ambayo wametumwa na koti watakuja huko, usimame kwa plot yako na zile sakabati ambayo ulipatiwa na former county council, wakuke wahakikishe na pengine kipande yako wahakikishe hiyo ndio chamba lako, na kutoka hapo uwekwe tick, alafu ngoje title yako.
Mahali process imefika ni kuenda kuverify plot yako ama shamba lako mahali liko, ukitumia zile document ulipewa na county council za allotment letter. Hapo ndio tutaanzia. Mtu ikiverifyiwa title deed yako inakuwa in process, na najua governor wetu ako kwa mpango na anaharakisha serikali kuu kuensure title deed sa wakaaji wa South Ngariema zimetoka kwa haraka iwezekanavyo.
And still in Kirinyaga County, tea directors from Zone 5 in the same county are up in arms alleging an invasion by tea hawkers, claiming they are taking advantage of farmers and buying their tea at throwaway prices. Board member Mithano Susanna has cautioned the farmers against being lured into selling their tea to the hawkers and instead continue to deliver them to the factories, adding that hawkers are buying a kilo of tea at 25 shillings, while the factories pay the farmers more than 50 per kilogram, including the bonuses.
Kuna kampuni imekuja hapa Kirinyaga inafanya mambo ya hawking. Na hii kampuni inatoka pande ya Embu na Meru, na inanunua kilo moja kwa shilingi 25, na itafanya mkulima wetu aingie kwa shida, kwa sababu sisi kama KTDA tunalipa more than shilingi 50. Kwa hivyo tumeambia mheshimiwa aende atuangalilie maneno ili hiyo kampuni isimamishwe.
There is one character called Jero whatever factory. He has introduced hawking of tea from Kirinyaga, buying tea from farmers, and as an agent called Makothe. Makothe also comes from Embu. And we know they have been restricted in other counties from coming, from hawking. What they are doing, they are buying that tea at 25 shillings. And we have been informed by the directors and the chairman that hakuna factory hata moja, the last bonus, haikulipa 50 shillings. So they are stealing 25 shillings from our people. Now, that means that we start guarding our farms the way some people are guarding their farms with avocado isikaibiwe. So what we are telling Jero, and what we'll be putting Tea Board on notice, tell us what license Jero factory is using to hawk tea from Kirinyaga.
To some good news, Mount Kenya University Meru branch has launched a multi-purpose modern laboratory as a major boost to the new research and examination of science subjects in the school. And according to Mount Kenya University Vice Chancellor Deogratius Jaganyi, this is in line with the competency-based curriculum, and that the school is determined to produce practical-oriented students by providing them with state-of-the-art equipment that will enable the students to compete globally. The students have appreciated the move, noting that they used to spend a lot of time to travel to the main campus for the same services that are now available in the new facility. Now, Kenya Power says it has incurred losses of 59 million shillings in Nakuru County within the 11 months after criminals vandalized 59 transformers and distribution lines. This is according to the Kenya Power Central Rift Region Chief, that is the Chief Security Officer, Mr. Zachary Ombati, who says the trend has also frustrated efforts to turn Kenya into a 24-hour economy, as Chichi Josephine details.
Addressing members of United Scrap Metal Association, where officials from Kenya Power and Kenya Railways were also present, the Chief Security said those vandalizing power cables and transformers were rolling back the gains made through the last mile connectivity program.
Vandalism is a big menace within the Kenya Power. For example, in the last financial year, the year we are ending now tomorrow, we have lost around 59 transformers within Nakuru County. In total, that's around 59 million. And leave alone the losses we are carrying, our customers going without power. It's a big concern to us actually, in terms of the economy, what the company is losing in terms of revenue and the transformer itself.
Francis Mugo, the Scrap Metal Council chairman, revealed that they will initiate changes to the Scrap Metal Act 2015 to bring collectors, dealers and agents into the council regulatory framework, urging dealers not to contravene the laws governing the scrap metal sector in the country.
We are working closely with the Office of the Inspector General of Police, and he has been providing us with a lot of support. And generally, we are grateful for the multi-agency team, which has been doing the vetting for our members across the country. And we want to urge anybody across the country who does scrap metal business to make sure that he's within the regulatory framework, to make sure that he or she is registered, is known, so that we can be able to advise him accordingly, we can be able to engage him. At the same time, he can be known by the government that he does the scrap metal business.
Kenya Power recently stepped up efforts to combat vandalism of its infrastructure in a bid to deter criminals.
Nimeona ya kwamba members wetu mambo ambayo wameongeleshwa leo, kama kuna mtu ambaye atapatikana akijihusisha na vitu ambazo ni vandalized, huyu hata hakuna kuongea na yeye, kwa sababu vile zamani tumekuwa tukisema Kenya Power hafanyi kazi ama Railway hafanyi kazi, but siku ya leo tumejua ya kwamba these people are even more than willing to clean this job.
The Ministry of Energy and its agencies have been the most affected, with its key critical infrastructure being the target.
The items which are normally vandalized are transformers, conductors, and even earth rods from our transmission lines.
Statistics show that Kenya exported about 17,874 and 12,722 metric tons of scrap metals, worth 5.9 and 4.5 billion shillings in 2021 and 2022, respectively. Chichi Josephine, TV47.
The National Council for Nomadic Education in Kenya has inaugurated an integrated 3-tier initiative that promotes the use of clean energy technologies for cooking, while at the same time bolstering environment greening through the tree plantation in schools from semi-arid regions.
The National Council for Nomadic Education in Kenya has unveiled an integrated trio initiative to foster environmental conservation through use of clean energy technologies.
And use less fuel. And so this is...
The initiative also comprises of a nutritious meal provision to enhance a balanced diet among children benefiting from the government feeding program.
Food is important. One, it attracts children to school. Two, when they're in school, they're able to concentrate on their learning. They have the energy to undertake physical tasks that require energy. If they're healthy, because they're eating well, they're able to come to school consistently without fail.
NACONAC Deputy Director in charge of Quality Assurance and Standards, Kezia Ondera, said that the persistent use of wood fuel for cooking by schools has resulted in environmental degradation.
Wood fuel causes a lot of carbon emissions into the environment. And as we well know, most of the schools are relying on firewood to cook. We are selling the idea that schools need to shift from predominant use of fuel to considering clean cooking technologies, which will lower the amount of carbon emissions into the environment.
The Deputy Director lauded the introduction of the feeding program in the arid and semi-arid lands, ASAL counties.
Schools need to consider planting trees because the trees will provide the raw materials for production of briquettes. If we have to go energy-saving jikos or even steam cookers, we have to consider briquettes, we have to consider gas, which can be biogas, which can be LPG.
Wandera also called on schools to focus on planting fruit trees as well as vegetables, saying it will supplement the dieting aspect.
We have branches that you can begin pruning and
Now, leaders affiliated to the Kenya Kwanza government are persistently rallying support for the Finance Act as its ultimate fate now rests with the courts. And as Flora Limuki now tells us, Azimio la Umoja leaders have asked their Kenya Kwanza counterparts to respect the rule of law.
Justice Mugure Thande's decision to temporarily halt the implementation of the Finance Act 2023 has left the ruling Kenya Kwanza government in limbo as they await the final verdict. The assenting into law of the bill is one of the President William Ruto's strategy to raise revenue for the first budget. President Ruto has called on the opposition to seek amicable ways of airing their views, saying that mass protests are no option as they will only derail the government's agenda.
Hata ukiweka sufuria kwa kichwa miaka ngapi, bei ya unga itakuja chini. Si lazima tusaidie wakulima waende shambani ndio wazalishe chakula ya kutosha. So mimi nataka niwahakikishie hiyo mpango tutapanga na nyinyi.
I believe there ahead we would expect that the larger public good takes the lead in whatever decision they may come up with.
Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua accusing the opposition of fueling tribal incitement against residents of Nakuru County during the election period. This comes days after the Azimio coalition reverted to nationwide protest after the passing of the Finance Bill 2023. The Raila Odinga-led coalition is set to resume protest come next week. At the same time, Laikipia East constituency Member of Parliament Mwangi Kiunjuri has called on the opposition side, led by Raila Odinga, to offer a better alternative to Kenyans that will caution them from high cost of living rather than engaging in anti-government demonstrations, which he says they bring more harm than good to the economy.
Katika uchaguzi uliopita, hii ndio ilikuwa headquarter ya uchochezi na fitina. Na wale wapinzani wetu ambayo walikuwa hawana agenda ya kuuza.
You are not giving us an alternative. The alternative, you only say we are going for Maandamano, picketing. Will picketing or Maandamano add more money to Kenyans?
Leaders allied to the Azimio faction have called on Kenya Kwanza government to stop defiance and abide by court orders issued on Friday by the High Court to suspend the implementation of the new Finance Act 2023. This is in regard to IPRA's move to increase fuel prices despite the court order.
Wabunge wakituangusha, koti inatuokoa. Si ni kweli?
The fate of the Finance Act now lies on the High Court's verdict. Flora Limuki, TV47.
Now, parents are set to dig deep into their pockets to facilitate their children back to school as from today, following an increase of fuel prices by the Energy and Petroleum Regulatory Authority, EPRA, as part of implementing the proposals of the Finance Act of 2023.
As a sign of preparing parents psychologically, drivers and matatu owners have noted that they will be adjusting their transport charges to fit in the market prices of fuel prices that are currently standing at a historic 195.53 per litre of petrol and 179.67 per litre of diesel. In reference to the situation at hand, Narok Line Limited Director Andrew Mwangi is advocated for a cheaper price of commodity so as to caution Kenyans from the high cost of living they are currently facing.
Mafuta imeenda juu zaidi na zaidi. Hivi sasa magari sijui tutafanya namna gani juu sasa serikali imepandisha mafuta. Hatukatai ipandisha mafuta. Lakini sasa kulingana na vile mambo ilivyo unakuta tunaelekea msimu wa watoto warudi shule sasa by Monday. Wazazi hawana mipango yoyote ya ile pesa itaongezwa kesho. ama leo ama kesho kutwa. Sasa tunaomba serikali, sisi hatuna ubishi na serikali. Ndio serikali tunataka iwe na pesa. Lakini ile kitu tunataka itoe hata kama ni shilingi 5.
The drivers have called on the national government to consider reviewing other revenue that they are subjected into so as to prevent them from incurring more losses.
Kama saa hii ukiangalia kuna magari inaenda zaidi ya kaunti 10. Ukiangalia upande ya kaunti 10 unakuta kila kaunti inalipa 2,000. Nairobi inalipa 3,000 na zaidi ya 400. Sasa ukiangalia hizo pesa unakuta gari moja inalipa kila mwisho wa mwezi, wacha habari ya mafuta, inalipa zaidi ya shilingi 20,000 na kitu. Sasa tungeuliza serikali, kama ni mambo hii revenue account zote, iwe kitu kimoja, kama ni kaunti moja vile inatakiwa. Iwe hiyo tunakata barua ya kaunti moja, tunakata risiti moja akaunti zote.
In Mombasa County, it is all system ready for a change in the public transport sector, with the drivers expressing their readiness in reciprocating to EPRA's directive by creating a system that will bring them to speed on the new changes.
We have decided, Mombasa drivers, to speak with one voice, and this voice to be heard across our great nation. Echoing the words of our president that if you are not on the table, you would easily find yourself in the menu. And for that reason, we are not willing to take risk and find ourselves in the menu.
Jackson Chacha, TV47.
The Law Society of Kenya, the Katiba Institute, and Eliud Matindi's case of stopping the 50 CASs from assuming office or receiving any salary is set for determination today. President William Ruto oversaw the swearing-in of the 50 individuals earlier in March this year, but the High Court put a halt by ordering the CASs from assuming office. And as Micah Gungo interrogates, how did the country get into such a quagmire?
I, Dennis Njue Itumbi.
A three-judge bench constituted by Chief Justice Martha Koome is set to determine the case about 50 sworn-in CAS Monday. Justice Hedwig Ongondi temporarily barred the 50 CASs from earning any salary, remuneration and any benefit until the court rules on the matter. In 2017, former President Uhuru Kenyatta announced the creation of a new position of Chief Administrative Secretary in every ministry. Uhuru said the CAS position would further enhance the operations of cabinet secretaries in running various ministries.
Wesley Kipchumba Korir.
The CAS position will then be the second senior officer in the ministries, as they will be coordinating work by state departments, headed by principal secretaries. President Ruto's appointment followed the steps of his predecessors by appointing 50 CASs to join his government. However, on March 24th, the High Court stopped the 50 CASs from assuming office, pending the hearing and determination of a suit filed by the Law Society of Kenya and the Katiba Institute. The petitioners argued the move by the president to unconstitutionally create an additional 27 offices in the public service to be financed using public funds violates Article 201 and 228(5), which calls for prudent use of the public service. The petition, according to the court documents, seeks to examine the powers of the president to create an office for the public and whether he can disregard the recommendations of the PSC. Those sued are the President of the Republic of Kenya and PSC. The 50 CASs have been listed as interested parties. The CASs positions have largely been given to politicians who supported President William Ruto's bid to presidency but lost their political ambitions.
In our midst here today, we've had people who have served as MCAs, others who have served as bloggers, others who have served formerly as members of parliament, cabinet secretaries. Some of you have served as governors. But today you have joined my team to work for the people of Kenya.
Among those sworn in the CAS's position is Isaac Mwaura, who will be CAS in the office of the Prime Cabinet Secretary. Mwaura lost in the Ruiru parliamentary race in August election.
What we were told is not to officially function as such. You get my point? To officially function as CAS or to report to office. But the title or the gazette notice that we were sworn in, we are already sworn in, my brother.
Enough said, many view the position as meant to reward loyalties to the head of state, who had missed out on opportunities of state appointments. Mike Kagwango, TV 47, Nairobi.
The Chief Administrative Secretary in the Government of Kenya.
The Constitution is a problem.
The gentlemen are already here. We are about to get to the conversation. We have governance expert Peter Mushendu, political strategist Benji Ndolo, as well as Mheshimiwa Anthony Ikonya on board. And these are the gentlemen that will help us decipher on the subjects that we intend to. I'll just look at this very last story by Mike Kagwango in relation to the coming on board of the CASs, and we wait for the determination today. A developing story that we'll be following up closely on, and we'll certainly be here to update you equally on the conversation as to anti-logging. I think that's a story that we carried earlier on. We'll delve deep into understanding that and perhaps just get to understand of what importance that would be. And equally, we just want to review on what we achieved in relation to that ban that was set by President Uhuru Kenyatta, that is during his reign, alongside the CS Keriako Tobiko. And we'll also get to understand some more of what then plays out after that declaration by the courts on a Friday, that is the High Court, in relation to the Finance Act 2023. So hold it right here. Allow us to take a quick short break, and then I come back with the gentlemen. Gentlemen, we are back.
We have tokenism. Yes.
We are back. Tokenism is a big problem, and we're talking about public participation and what exactly participation then is in this country. As earlier mentioned, we have Mheshimiwa Anthony Ikonya, we have Benji Ndolo, as well as Peter Mushendu. And we swing into action. First of all, allow you to say jambo to the people. I think it's only fair. And equally pass our condolences to the lives that were lost during this Londiani accident. We'll start with you.
I want to say good morning to every viewer of TV47, and as you have ably put it, I would start by giving my condolences to the victims of the Rodiana accident. I happen to know 2 families that have lost their dear ones. One is from Muhoroni. You know, that's the junction that goes to Muhoroni. But the big question is, how are we going to regulate how we use our roads? Because in other countries, you see them have developed laws and load regulations that regulate how trailers are actually controlled. They are in countries that around that time when the traffic is so busy with human traffic, you will not see those big lorries and trailers on the road. We must regulate how people do business on the roadside, because when I saw the Rodiani accident, I felt on what would happen at Gitaru, where I pass every morning and people are there selling. They're just there. What would happen to traders in Kamandora here in Limuru, where they are always on the road? One time I almost hit, because they also cross haphazardly on the road. But having said that, I have also think that I've used the Rodiani route to Kericho so many times, and every time I'm passing that junction, the idea of just having, I think, 2 bumps really puts a goosebump in you, considering you are coming from a downhill heading to that direction. And I was told by a friend, when they hit Kamandora Junction coming to town with trailers, they would switch off the engine and drive all the way to Gitaru, where they hit the junction without engine being on. You know, these trailers, they use what you call hydraulics to be able to give good brakes. And if you have switched off the engine, it also means that your hydraulics are not working to their best. And I can imagine coming from up there, heading to the Rodiani Junction, probably somebody may have done the same mistake and at some point not being able to control the truck. So we must not just mourn those guys and send our condolences, but the government must be seen to act, and they must make actions that are going to really protect lives of people. If such a junction is very busy, let's see whether we will do quite a number of bumps and probably come with regulations that does not find such trailers on the road in such a busy time. But however, we pray for the families that have lost their dear ones and that the Lord is going to console them.
Well said. And Benji, as you say, Jambo, and as well speak to this, of concern is what is captured on page 2. Londiani accident, traders defy order to vacate roadside market.
You know, Linda, good morning, everyone. I'm the last person in Kenya to believe in reactionary stuff. A lot of my advocacy is based on the simple fact that I say every time that we must do things properly, and we do not do things properly. Just before we came on air, Peter, my brother here, and I are discussing the whole decision on CASs, etc. And it's just a continuation and a testament of the culture of impunity, of the culture of corruption, of the culture of chaos and disorder and dysfunction and unconstitutionalism. We simply do not do things properly. It is for that reason that so many lives are lost. I mean, what are people doing selling on the road? The poverty levels in this country, Mheshimiwa, have become unbelievable, unfathomable. You know, look at the headline in The Nation today. Youth are just fleeing Kenya as if Kenya is at war, like Ukraine, as if Kenya is up in flames. People are just leaving. The unemployment is out of control. And you know, if you look at The Nation up there, before you look at even the story, just the line above that where the date is, right there. You look at the pricing for The Nation. You look at the pricing in Rwanda. You look at the pricing in Uganda and in Tanzania. It tells you the superiority of the Kenyan shilling. The same Kenya shilling, Peter, that we are looting every day, that we are destroying this country, that fuel prices are out of control. This thing could easily be 15 shillings, Kenya money, compared to Tanzania, compared to Uganda, etc. We are such a robust economy with tremendous potential, but we refuse to have leadership. All we want to do is run around, have a governor come and give a reactionary statement, have the CS for roads and transport come and give a reactionary statement, you know, something that is supposed to be a policy statement that is then vacated within 3 days. In those same visits, remember these big people are claiming allowances. They're coming in there in helicopters, riding. So we have a very big expenditure problem. We have a very, very big looting problem. We have a very big problem with our governance, simply because, Linda, we will not follow constitutional dictates that look at Article 10 and other articles that can make this a country governed well for the benefit and welfare and just government of men, of its citizens. And so we pay for this in blood. Within a week, we'll have forgotten about this accident. And that's why, for me, I say we shouldn't be reactionary. It is about policy. Solid policy proposals, of course, and enforcement. Peter was talking about, it's called freewheeling. Switching off a lorry or coming down with no gears, etc. But you see, what he didn't touch on is why people do that. Is to save on fuel. Because fuel is a big problem. We remember Sachangwan. So this is one issue of freewheeling and accidents. The other issue is anytime a truck, overturns, you will have police officers warning Kenyans to stay away, but they look at the benefit of siphoning fuel, and do you believe it, to this day, our people will still go and siphon fuel. Suck fuel with their mouth to go and try and sell and put 100 shillings in their pocket to put food for. It is really so painful. And it's something that we must speak to and condemn and urge the leadership to do things properly on this 3rd day of July in 2023. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, and perhaps why we would want to agree to what it is that Benji says, and largely also what it is that Peter says, is that this is not the first time that such a scenario is playing out. I remember in my very young days, staying along Thika Road, almost a similar thing played out around Githurai there, roundabout, and it was bad, and very many people lost their lives because a bus, veered off the road into the traders that were, conducting business.
Selling bananas.
Selling bananas. And then you ask yourself, it is left at the disposal of who to address some of these things. Then get us to a space where we will not be reactionary, and get us to a space where these laws are enforced. It doesn't matter what government is in place, because to imagine this is happening, and so now we are all busy rushing in this side of, Naivasha, or this side of Eldoret, but on this side, they're telling you we are hungry. You're not about to tell us to go back to this other side. Who's going to come and buy our stuff? After all, we have to fend for our families.
That's all. Good morning, Kenyans, and all the viewers that are watching us. My heart goes out to the Londiani victims. It was a very tragic accident, and I will just pray to God that He consoles the families of the people that were lost at Londiani. But alluding to what my brother here said, I think it trickles down to the state of the economy. If you look at the headlines, if you look at page 2, the Londiani accident traders defy orders to vacate roadside. Ideally, what happens in a real, robust economy, people go out looking for products and, things that are offered in the market. But things are so bad in Kenya to the extent that the traders have to come to the road and showcase their products to lure you into buying those products. For example, I've used that food so many times, and it's a place that I'm fond of buying onions. They've some very good onions. So I do some shopping for the family and that kind of a thing. But you see, to most men, you buy what you see. That is why men will go with all sorts, because if it's not brought to where you are, it's not brought to your eyes. Yeah. And so basically that's what informs those people bringing the products to the road. But where does it begin? It begins with the state of the economy. That things are so bad that whatever little thing that I have, whether it's a chick or a chicken or whatever, I have to bring it out to the market and showcase it at whatever risk, so that I can be able to afford a simple meal at the end of the day. Even a puppy. We've seen Westlands, somewhere along Westlands, guys with puppies and what have you. That is where we've got into. So, but I think government has to do, it leaves a lot to be desired, in terms of, because you want to tell me that the CS for transport has never used that road. You want to tell me the governor for Kericho is a person who frequents that road almost every day. This is something that we've all seen. It glares right into your eyes, and this is an accident in waiting. But what do? We do nothing. The government does nothing. So I think we need not to react into things like now they've issued a nationwide, advisory in terms of where market should be. The governor came on Friday and identified a place for market that day, and here today they start developing that place. It has been there all along. So I think the government should stop being reactionary and start being serious and face problems. And government has intelligence. Some of these things don't even require intelligence. It requires you can see with your bare eyes. So I think we need to do a lot, but my heart goes out to those victims.
All right. Yeah. And we get to, I don't know whether we have that story, Mr. Director, on the anti-logging or the lifting of that ban, 6-year ban that was put on board by the former president, Uhuru Kenyatta, at that point when the CS was Keriako Tobiko. That was in a bid to address the questions of, the environment. We all understand how difficult times they have been, It's been a global move. And also, just looking at the receding water levels in the country, they decided that they're going to impose this ban. But then again, President William Ruto then says that we have to lift this. Many would want to call him a president of lifting the bans, upon lifting that, upon lifting the GMO ban and all that. Peter Mushindu, here we are. What do you make of this, logging moratorium being lifted?
Well, I will start by saying the logging moratorium issued in 2018 was totally in bad faith, if you ask me.
Yeah.
Because this would come after the former president appointed a long-time business family that did business with the first family then. I don't want to mention names because I don't want to get in trouble and get TV47 in trouble. But we know of a family that has been in logging business since the 70s when Jomo Kenyatta was the president of the Republic of Kenya.
Okay.
Been the Kenyatta Family Business Associate for so many years. They would first of all be given the control of pen paper, which especially depended on logging to do its business. One of the family members would later be appointed to the Kenya Forestry Board, and immediately the moratorium logging ban was given in 2018. This was given in bad faith. It was supposed to put some people and some companies out of business, so that it can leave what you call a monopoly in that logging business.
Okay.
And this has automatically killed the economies like that of Moro, Elbago, Njoro, that route. And they provided quite a sizable amount of logs to make wood products in Kenya. Now, there is a very thin line between logging that is profitable and that makes business for Kenyans in this country.
And perhaps that would have been my question to you, because you agree that then, as this, was enshrined, or as this was being incorporated, reality is that we had a problem.
No, you see, but you see, the thing is, if they brought the logging ban and also dealt with our issue of forest cover, then I would say that they were serious. But just banning logging did not mean that the forest cover that we lost because of illegal logging came to be. In fact, they never went beyond putting that logging ban into addressing. You remember the Maui issue has been a thorn in our flesh for a long time. Nobody bothered in that government to address that issue. But mother, the point is, when we banned logging in this country, it is the day we decided that we are going to import cheap furniture products from China that have engulfed our society. Now, this government could not actually create business for those people who are making wood products in Kenya with the logging being in place. Because I will tell you, even those people who have private artificial forests that they have done for the purposes of getting raw materials for their businesses have been learning a business of cat and dog in the highways. The Kenya Forestry Service Service Police Unit and the National Police Service have become a menace on those people who have been doing genuine business.
Okay.
These are people who buy logs from private farms, who have planted the artificial forests. I would have a problem if we were logging our indigenous forest, which I think the lifting of the ban should be very explicit onto how much logging has been allowed to do, because then if it is going to become a danger to our forest cover, then you have, and that's why I've told you, there is a very, very thin line between the logging that is going to actually help this economy and the people who are waiting for that ban to be lifted to participate in illegal logging. So I want to hope that when lifting this ban, a very serious and a very deliberate conversation has happened.
Yeah.
And the process of ensuring that the same is not abused is in place. But the truth of the matter is, we cannot give a blanket ban on logging in this country unless we want to continue importing cheap products from China, which is also robbing us what is called export income from our export, because we are now importing. If we want to do hardwood products, we have to get them to Uganda from Congo, which is unfortunate because the same can be found in this country. But now there is a very thin line between lifting that ban and people on the sidelines waiting to misuse that particular lift of that ban.
And that's a reality that we're going through, Mheshimiwa. Briefly before we come to Benji, you know, it's quite a thin line, as he would say, and we ask ourselves, just where will the discipline be? Because by the time we're getting into this, space, forget about, the people involved and, the black market they are in, and, the corrupt activities and cartelism they're in. We had a problem. We look at the water levels and we were concerned. Can we say that this government is capable of making sure that then there's going to be some level of discipline as to how we handle this, regulations that are good enough to create a proper balance?
I highly doubt. I want to agree with my good friend Mushendu. There's a very thin line. Because if you look at logging, if you look at the global environmental practices and statutes and whatever, which Kenya promised to adhere. The other day we had a conference in the country, and you remember the First Lady is the one who's leading in the fight against deforestation. So I think there's a very thin line. The first question that we need to ask ourselves: are we out of that danger? Are we out of the danger of water levels? Are we out of like what you just alluded to, the Mau issue? Are we out of that danger? To what extent have we planted trees? We said we want to plant about 15 billion trees in 10 years. If you cut down to that to the number of years they want us to do 15 billion, that tells you we need to do 1.something billion, 1 billion plus trees in a year. Have we done that within the 10, 11 months that this government has been in power? I don't think we've done that. So we really need to look at it critically. And as Mushendu says, we can't just give a blanket, all that to allow logging. There has to be specifications in terms of where exactly are we going to, which trees are we talking about, so that it doesn't, leave, because Kenyans, and one of the problems we've had in this country when that was being banned is, illegal logging and what have you, because everybody will now go into cutting trees. And with this state of the economy, let me tell you something, when you allow that, then every tree is going to fall, So there has to be specifications, and we have to know exactly what we need to do. So I don't think it's something that just needs to happen today. For example, that logging was the ban was lifted, and so everybody today will now go into the forest. But again, we also need to look at the cost of wood in this country. Look at the cost of furniture. Look at the cost of versus. Most people have now opted to use steel, for example, to even do roofing and all those things. So again, the cost of importing wood from outside has been a major issue. So when we allow ourselves to, have wood in this country, again, that will subsidize our price. So it's a dicey affair that needs a lot of careful, thought and looking into. So we look at the cost of wood, we look at the environmental implication that it has, whether we're out of the wood so far. So it's something that we need to get the experts sit down before we actually allow the actual logging to start beginning, so that we are able to know specifically what forests are we targeting, what have we done, what in terms of forestation, how many trees have we planted? We needed to do 1 billion plus this year. Like in Kiambu, I haven't seen much of that happening. We have the Karaita forest, for example. So it's a dicey affair that needs a lot of consideration.
Benji, at a time when we're talking about preserving the environment and just how crucial trees are at that, I do not understand, or perhaps Kenyans would want to ask, between the Uhuru government and the Ruto government, just who was genuine in terms of addressing this? And I mean, where then do we strike a balance? Because after all, the current president argues, and his arguments really hold water to a large extent. But at the same time, there was a reason as to why this ban was effected then. What have we achieved? What do we intend to achieve? How do we strike a balance in making sure that this, is of...
Linda, the last time I was here, which was just a few weeks ago, we talked about, the current administration and the fact that I personally really hate, and I supported the president throughout, because he's a smart guy. So it baffles me, and I'm sure Mheshimiwa here agrees, we're talking off camera a bit. It baffles me that President Ruto seems to be struggling on so many fronts. I don't understand why. It's just a matter of picking a few initiatives, setting a goal, and quickly working towards that goal. It's not... One of the areas, and we talked about this the last time, is, the president must allow work to speak more than words. Work, deliverables, projects, initiatives must speak louder than words. So something like the ban on logging and his directive and guidance, which I personally followed as well, to plant trees. The logging should come on the back of evidence that so many trees have been planted. By the way, may I take this opportunity on TV47 to announce to the country that, we underwent La Nina, the prolonged kind of drought. And what follows La Nina, Peter? El Nino. So from October until January, we're going to have very heavy rains. This message must be received by Governor Sakaja and other leaders. For preparedness purposes. Not only should we make sure we have drainage and whatnot prepared, but also this is the time now to start while the sun is away, preparing and doing seedlings and plan to get a lot of that water in a useful manner. To Masinga Dam, for instance, half of it has been, downstream, has been dry. It is time now to actually make plans to plant trees and to hold water in water bodies in a very deliberate and very purposeful fashion, okay? So that the logging wouldn't be a problem if it was very clear to all and sundry that government has very clear policy on afforestation, that therefore there's a balance, that you are logging while others are coming, etc. So that we, as Peter was saying earlier, the economies of Molo, Elbagon, and what have you, that were devastated. Remember, a lot of these things happened under President Moi, who for all intents and purposes, Moi was not a graduate like Dr. Ruto. So, this was the 90s, this was not the information age. Now, the president has no excuse with people like Moses Kuria around him, graduates, people who are speaking, different languages and who are very well exposed, unless they don't have a good intention.
But Linda, just to add another
very quick one.
It bothers me a lot.
A very quick one. When I heard the president declare, a lift on that ban, I asked myself, why did he have to do it in Molo?
Okay.
Is it for political purposes? Is it because Kimani, his chairman, the finance committee, having done what, having served...
But you've had Mushendu as well highlighting Molo as one of the key areas that benefited out of this.
I agree.
Yeah. It's like going to speak about Mira in Molo. You'd expect for him to go to Meru.
Let me ask you, for example, the Ministry of Environment sit down after careful consideration, that was floated, and then, the president was well advised in terms of we can now open logging, and then now he knew exactly what he was saying. Was it out of the fact that he was in a place where the economy revolves around logging and for political purposes? And I really pitied the president yesterday because he was talking to the people of Molo. I watched a clip and he was asking, Tuko pamoja, and nobody cares, including those who, that you would expect the area member of parliament to have, of course, lobbied the youth. And it was a really unfortunate situation. Was it a political move, to just entice the people of Molo and Bangon and those people living around there? Because you see, Linda, we're living in a country where we've had many promises and delivered. That is why my brother here is saying we need to see action. We don't need to just hear words, more than words. Let us ask ourselves, for example, let us look at the catchment areas, because you remember, most of the times Kenya Power used to tell us that we have a problem with water levels at the dams, But since Uhuru stopped the issue of logging, we've not had that problem at all, So are we looking at logging, including in the catchment areas?
Was it by design, as Mushendu had earlier alluded? That they could have been by design, and so if this is by design, you'd expect.
Look at it. Yes. There was a problem. There was a real problem.
Yes. I thought it was factual, and I think I remember that time. It was really...
Remember, Kenya Power would tell us every day we have to use diesel now because our water levels, are unmanageable. But today, we no longer have that problem.
We're coming back to you and your political position as of now, because I think I smell a rat. I don't know whether he holds the same political position that he did back then. But we're coming to you.
I want to confess.
I'll tell you.
Hold it.
I'm a very objective person.
Hold it. I'm coming back to you, so you can answer that objectively as well.
The truth of the matter is...
Okay.
The truth of the matter is, and I say this without... The problem in this country has never been about logging. We in order to achieve the world acceptable forest cover, we would need to require as a country to have at least 10% of our nation being forest covered. If you look at the statistics in year 2022, last year, we were about 8.8. That says we are shy 1.2% of the required forest cover. But I would also say this, these, other than just banning logging, the government did nothing to actually improve our forest cover. And that is very suspicious, that you put a lot of millers and timber makers out of business, and you leave some certain 2-3 families that have been in that business for as long as we can remember in business. Now,
is that money in circulation in the country?
Yeah, you see, these are people who continue to do their business as if nothing happened.
But then that money is in circulation.
We have not had no, they do export, a lot of export. Now, this is the point. Out of the 10% that, the 8.8% that we are saying our country is covered now, 4.2% of the same is coverage of what is called exotic trees. Now, exotic trees, if you understand, the reason why there is a difference between exotic trees and indigenous trees can live for so many years without being touched. But exotic trees have their maturing period. And the moment they mature, if you do not harvest them, they start decaying. So we are priding ourselves in a very big forest cover of almost 4.something% that is covered with exotic trees that logging has been banned for 6 years. So they are not actually of any help to the economy of the country because they are decaying. Because this ban was not on private forest. It was on national forest and what you call community forests. But in those community forests and national forests, you have 4% coverage of exotic trees that would be required to be harvested for others to grow if we want to continue talking about their positive effect on climate change. And that's why I'm saying that the lifting of the ban that the president has done has to be very well elaborated. It has to talk about indigenous trees, exotic trees, what are we allowed to log, at what percentage should we log the indigenous or the, it must not be a blanket lift of that ban.
And of course,
so that we can, number one, ensure we protect. In this country, we have quite a big number of endangered indigenous species of trees that are not found anywhere else in the world. We must be able to protect that. But with equal measures, we must be able to pluck out those exotic trees that have already matured so that we can allow ourselves to plant others, because the moment exotic trees mature, they have no use in terms of the ecosystem, in terms of what Ikonya is talking about, our dams. They should be cut and we allow others to actually spring up. And that's the truth. So therefore, what I would say about this issue, my two brothers, you realize that they are reading ulterior motive in every single thing the government does. I don't know about Ndoro, because I have not had him being part and parcel of the current government, and I will not accuse him of changing tunes. But I have an issue with my friend Ikonya, who is saying that now he is a much
But they say
more...
it's only a fool that doesn't change their mind.
Why do you have a problem with me when I become objective?
So all these other times you've not been
I don't have to defend government.
He would really need to apologize to the TV47
I don't know whether you've been on
viewers.
Yeah, it's maturity. You've been on. He's been an ardent supporter.
You need to apologize to TV47 because unlike you, my friend, who are forward to do what you do, I've sat beside Ikonya for so many years, not months, years, preaching the same thing. Then you are on record here saying that now you are very objective. That means you have realized you have not been objective. And subsequently, you owe the TV47 viewers an apology for having given an objective views in the years we have been with you on this panel.
Let me say this, and I want to be very, very, very categorical in this.
Yeah.
I've been with Mushendo for so many years, and we assisted this government to get into power. You remember we've talked about so many things. Up until when this government could not deliver on what I told people this government would deliver. What do you expect me to tell them? You know, when we told people, we come here and told people the price of unga is coming down, the price of fuel is coming down. That is what we campaigned on. And then it's not coming down, it's coming up. What do you expect me to tell people?
It's a problem.
I mean, are you not part of... I must tell them,
yes.
I am sorry what I told you.
I don't agree.
I now don't agree because we came on the, you know, I looked at our manifesto, which I really participated in putting up in terms of economic revolution that will bring down the cost of living, that will bring down the cost of fuel, that will bring down the cost of all those things. Up to where CBC, I've had you read that now teachers are saying the report is nowhere to be seen. Up to when now headmaster teachers are saying we have to increase school fees. Why? Because the cost of fuel, you know, for feeding students and that kind of a thing, for feeding them and all those things are. What do you expect? I have to be a very honest person and tell people, you know, we told you the cost of living is good, because we would tell people on top of cars that this thing about raising fuel prices is stupid and is wrong. Then you come and raise. I mean, what do you expect me to tell people? I must be an honest person. I must be an honest person.
Yes.
You see, you know, the people we should blame and we should call out are the Mushendos of this country, who still insist on supporting this government when it's lying to its people.
Let's begin with this conversation on Friday and where it is that Okiya Omtatah now places us as a country.
Linda, I have been the most consistent Kenyan, especially on the issue of petroleum in this country. The single sole threat to the cost of living is not even, you know, people like to say corruption is a big thing. In fact, I take this opportunity once again, and I can see we're getting a lot of feedback. People are watching, even in different counties. I'm seeing feedback from Muranga, etc. And thanks to all who are watching, Kanyungo and the rest and your team. Keep sending us feedback. It's very important. I would like someone to tell us from this broadcast. I'm curious to know, and Mheshimiwa, you can help me with this, because there's a proposal I'm trying to make through David D. How many millions of liters of fuel does Kenya consume in a day? Because the way we're going, you see, there's a formula I want to try and do to propose that the government find a way to invest to bring petroleum down. The reason is, if miraculously, for instance, we're able to bring fuel just for argumentative purposes, and remember, even Honorable Mwai Kibaki, who was running for office many years ago, said, you know, of the fuel price, do you know about 50% of it is taxes, tariffs, duties, etc., etc. So there's a lot of mess in petroleum. And Linda, petroleum drives the cost of electricity. Transport is what we use to bring products from farm to market. When you talk of nauli, I mean, it's that we're going to 200 shillings a litre. It basically is almost a guarantee that we can never rebuild the economy. If we continue on this trajectory, it's practically impossible to rebuild the economy. In my village where I come from, and this is only 66 kilometers from Nyayo Stadium, average daily wage is 200 shillings a day, 250. So if a litre of petrol is 200, daily wage, people are looking for wage 200, unga is still at 200, where are we? I mean, and so, as Mheshimiwa alludes to, the manifesto for Kenya Kwanza was thoughtful. Remember, Ruto is a salesman, so he was able to think this through. He was able to look at the restructuring of Kenya Airways, you know, offloading of parastatals that are loss-making, and what have you, and cutting out of the fat, because our economy is designed top-heavy, where a majority of the resources, 13%, hold the resources for the remaining 87%. So with that kind of a structure, you cannot have distribution of wealth, you cannot have alleviation of poverty, you cannot have creation of opportunity, because one person who is, you know, a senior police officer or a senior government official or a governor is the same person who is a contractor for roads, is the same person who is a supplier for, you know, products in that construction, is the same person building dams, is the same person importing heavy equipment, is the same person jumping the queue at KRA, etc. And that is what it defines to be, you know, a Kenyan. And so we must, like Mheshimiwa say, you know, this is what our vision was. And at this point, I don't agree with the pathway that the government is continuing to take towards delivery of the same. Remember, and I said this here again a few weeks ago, we don't have a lot of time. In a new administration, you have about 2 years before we start campaigning again. So we must work with a sense of urgency. It's just the first year is settling, then 2 years to do actual work, and then the rest of the time is campaigning to go to re-election. So I feel that the president needs to take a step back and relook at the promises made. He needs to realize that hustlers are disappointed and disillusioned. That's a fact. We cannot go, I think during Uhuru's time, fuel was 157, 148. Now we are practically at 200. We have to have a reversal, no matter how that reversal happens. No matter how, if it means negotiating with Saudi Arabia, and I've said this many times, and then paying on our own terms, they'll agree, Bwana, and we give them something in return. But we cannot continue at this rate where youth who are unemployed feel things are unachievable. That's the headline. Youth are just leaving for Qatar, Dubai, United Kingdom. It's really sad that our best brains in medicine, in education, in logistics, etc., our best brains are in Virginia, they are in Texas. It's a fact of life.
And going to as low as 30,000 per month because they can't make that here.
Imagine.
It's really unfortunate.
It's serious brain drain.
That question that you put across, it's pure impunity. When government, in the face of 2 court orders.
How do you raise fuel against a court order?
Let me tell you something. On Saturday, something very interesting happened to me. I live very close to a petrol station. So I went fueling. I wanted to go to Naivasha. So I get to the station. The fuel price is at 195. When I was fueling, I get a call from the house. that my gas cylinder has run out. Now I tell them, now I get a reprieve because the last time I had, it was related. So I knew now fuel has gone up because it was from 8% to 16%. And I asked these guys, now how much is a gas cylinder? The same price. I told them, see, you've added fuel, you need to have lower this because it was related at this is old stock. And I was asking them, and fuel? Is this new stock?
How does it work?
It's impunity.
The
highest level of impunity. And let me tell you something. Kenyans this morning are living the pain of that decision. Today, I have called the few people. How much is it from Nairobi to Kiambu? It's normally 70 shillings every day. It's now 100 shillings. How much is border from a place like Kiambu town to the Indian Bazaar, which was previously 50 shillings? It's now 100 shillings. Things are pretty difficult.
Can I underscore with one statement? I have a very close friend of mine. Currently, he's in Rwanda for the last few weeks. Do you know, in Rwanda, if you are driving and you're going to stop and buy an orange, the government has designed, like rest stops. You get off the highway, you park your car, you buy an orange, then you get back on the highway and continue. If you're driving a border or you're driving a motorcycle, everybody obeys a red light. That's in Rwanda, a small country that is like a county in our country, under Kagame. You stop when it is red, you go when it is green. Anywhere in Rwanda at night, you walk because there is lighting and security anywhere and everywhere. There's military and there's police. In fact, he was just telling me it is unthinkable to think of impunity in Rwanda. In Rwanda, as soon as you enter the border, if you think of bribing at the airport or anywhere, and many Kenyans are in jail, you are literally, it's just like writing a letter and saying, my name is Peter, take me to committee now. And this is achievable. I'm just talking about a culture of doing things properly within the constitution, within the law. Is that so hard to do?
The same set of hard. Let's allow me. I can see it's erupting. But I particularly wanted to say, the same people, the same set of leaders who were erupting, were calling out Uhuru Kenyatta on, he's not following court orders and defiance and called him all sorts of names and previous governments. The same people are now defying those court orders. So I give it up to Mujendo to continue defending his people. I would simply say,
yes, and Musalia Mudavadi reacts to this. I don't know whether you heard him, and he says, well, this is about the interest of the people vis-a-vis what it is that the institutions are supposed to declare, and that perhaps we should not go in that direction at the expense of the interest of the people. And it gets us asking ourselves, at what point does this then become, increasing fuel and all that, become the interest of the people? We remind ourselves of the conversations that were ongoing during this time of whether we should, adapt the finance bill or not and everything. Today, it is an act. How do we get to create?
As I sympathize with us for the increased fuel cost, we must also be very objective in a debate, not to imply that the government has actually refused to obey a court order. You see, the finance bill came to effect on 1st of July.
Yes, that is on Saturday.
The Energy Regulatory Authority, EPLA, had issued the directive in accordance with the new finance bill and issued new prices because
it actually did not come into effect because then the court staggered that on Friday.
Hold your horses.
Yes.
Let's go slow.
Okay.
The EPLA has issued its directive on the new fuel cost on Friday.
Yes.
I have seen people argue that they issue this on every 13th. They come up with a new fuel cost on every 13th of every month. But this one is different because the new finance bill was taking effect the following day. Then you have Okiya Omtata who goes to court and obtains a court order. And it's very specific. That court case is between Okiya Omtata and the Treasury Cabinet Secretary, Treasury. So that particular order is served to the Treasury, which would then actually trickle down the order to the relevant government regulatories. Already, at the time they were issuing that particular order in court, EPRA had already issued. In fact, I am hoping that EPRA is going to actually issue another order today because today is the only practical
day
to rescind that.
I am a legal person, I can tell you.
Number two,
if we cannot allow him.
Let us allow him. Let us allow him. Then we'll have
We cannot allow him.
Ikonya, who is very dishonest, Ikonya, who is very dishonest,
Be responsible.
walks into a petrol station, finds that fuel has been hyped, but he needs a gas cylinder that still has been in the same price. But Ikonya does not sit here and tell you that EPRA does not control the cost of LPG gas.
Did I say they do?
No. You are expecting
At the petrol station.
At the petrol station for the price of gas to have gone down.
I think it's just a typical Kenyan question you would ask.
To have gone down.
Yeah.
This is a market which is not price. Actually, they do control who gets licenses and what have you, but they do not control the price of LPG gas, which for me, I still think it's a very wrong thing, because one of the most used commodities at homes today to alleviate things that comes with using those firewood and charcoal, which emits carbon, it's gas. And therefore, I still think that as a country, we need to come up with a mechanism of being able to offload gas directly from the port and sell it to company, because the reason why we cannot control the prices of gas is because we don't have facilities in Mombasa to offload LPG gas. So these are offloaded by private companies. But the point I'm trying to say is that these people want to make the government a villain, that the government of Kenya Kwanza did not deliver on what they promised. The reason why you go to hospital and you are told that you are suffering from malaria and you're given malaria medicines, and you get home, you realize that I'm not getting better. When you come back to the doctor, he tells you, go for further tests and see whether we can detect the actual problems. Very sad that when you do that test, you actually know that you are suffering from a different, more severe problem. And this is the case of the fate that has befallen the Kenya Kwanza government. The Kenya Kwanza government has come to power. We have found that our debt problem is way thicker than we actually thought. That is one. We have found that the economy is actually in the pit. That more than we knew the economy was not okay. But to that extent, because Linda, I've been telling you here, one, we have a debt problem in this country that needs to be worked on.
Fixed, yeah.
We have an economy that needs to be revamped. We cannot go and borrow some more because our debt is about to skyrocket to the worst. But you have people like Ikonya and our friend here sit here on panels every morning. They tell you that this government must not borrow. They tell you this government must not tax. And when we say that Kenyans have been overtaxed, I would want them to come up with research and tell us, maybe in the African continent, in terms of average or in terms of percentage, where does Kenya stand in terms of taxation? Where does Kenya stand in terms of dealing with debt, external debt that is becoming a menace?
Point of order.
You see, you get your point to rebuttal. What I am trying to say that you cannot have your cake and eat it. It is either we decide we are going to borrow some more despite our skyrocketing problem, or it is either we decide that we are going to get more taxes. And you see, it is exactly what Kibaki, the people continue praising on how he did with the economy. When Kibaki took power, we were collecting 240 billion shillings a year. By the time he left in 10 years, we were collecting more than 800 billion, instituted some some tax obligations on Kenyans, widened the tax net that we are able to even have Kenyans who did not pay tax start paying. We are saying that we want to create business so that we can widen the tax net. And this is the truth. It is either we agree we are going to borrow to actually let Kenyans not deal with their problem right now and procrastinate the problem like what the fourth government did, or it is as we take an opportunity, we say that we are going to deal with the problem now. It might hurt us in 1 or 2, 3 years, but eventually we are going to get out of a problem. Look at the world's best economies, Linda, and I want them to tell me which economy today that it is said is doing well, that never did what Kenyans did. And at some point, there is a generation in their nation that had to pay the cost of getting their economies to where they are.
It is that moment.
In the America, in the Europe, and that's the truth.
Turnaround
and I want them to refute that.
Okay, that is a turnaround moment.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just 1 second. The president was deputy president in the previous regime.
Perfect.
Yeah.
As deputy president, and I've worked in the deputy president's office before, the holder of that office is a recipient of intelligence. In fact, the way the structure was and the realities for that administration were, until the handshake, for all intents and purposes, the deputy president, William Ruto, because by his very nature, he doesn't drink, he's extremely hardworking, gets up very early in the morning. For all intents and purposes, he actually ran the government for many years. So the issue of debt stress for this country does not come as a shocker to His Excellency, who is the president now and was the deputy president then. We also have a problem of expenditure, which has continued now and continues big time. As much as we are saying things are hard for hustlers, things are not hard for Kina Gachagua. They're spending, they're running around, flying all over the place, taking Harambee money and what have you. And so what I am urging, once again, is for us to be honest in private, to be honest on air, and to do things properly. That's all I'm saying. This is not for my personal benefit. This is for the benefit of all the hustlers in Kiharu, all the hustlers wherever they are. In fact, for all Kenyans. Because, Linda, everybody knows that I supported His Excellency William Ruto for my own reasons, because he's hardworking, because he had the zeal, and everybody in Kenya knows I didn't support the other guy. And so we want this president to succeed. His success is success for the Republic. I hate to imagine that this administration will continue with the Madhogodhanyo of the previous administration. It will be extremely heartbreaking for William Ruto to continue down the path that Uhuru Kenyatta did, a path of reckless government, a path of mammoth looting and corruption. If you look at all the manner of scandals, in fact, I dare say on air without naming names, I ran into a doctor the other day who was in charge of coordinating the entire program during the COVID scandal. And the doctor said to me, do you know, I actually placed a call to Waziri at that time, and he picked my call, and I said, Waziri, yani, I'm so scared to go home to my family because I'm doing COVID, you know, because you're scared of infecting your kids. I am so shocked to see in the media that while we are undergoing all this stress and trying to fix this country out of a pandemic, people are actually making money in billions. And the minister just said, please try not to think about that. And he hung up. It is unthinkable, the kind of impunity, the kind of evil spirit that has stalked this nation. It is my prayer that this administration will not go down the perilous path of harassment, of impunity, of callousness and carelessness, because everybody is watching. Everybody is watching when you just run helter-skelter against court orders. I'm one of the loudest advocates that said, how do you stone the deputy president's convoy? You know, Kina Babu Owino and all these other guys. I never stood for that, Peter. Why do you think I would stand for impunity now if I couldn't stand for impunity and I was saying loudly that the deputy president, William Ruto, is a human being, first of all? You know, all the kind of humiliation and madness that was going on. Why do you think now that I should find it okay because the shoe is on the other foot? When he was at Bomas trying to talk and Kinamili Odhiambo are heckling, and they're only thinking of short-term transactional gain to play games that presume that His Excellency Uhuru can somehow just pass the baton to his friend Raila Odinga. In fact, they were outright advocating for rigging and impunity. Outright. They were saying let the president use the military or any means possible to install the former prime minister as the president of Kenya. We didn't stand for that, Peter. Why do you think I would stand for...
Peter speaks on the need for a turnaround, yeah?
Two things.
And it's on a Friday.
Two things.
Yes.
Two things. I want to address that.
All right.
I want to address that. And it's really unfortunate that Peter would take us down that route. Very, very unfortunate. Because the law is very clear. If you look at the civil procedure rules, it's very clear. Once a court order is served or a government institution Because if you look at this particular court order, it is suspending a gazette notice. When it suspends a gazette notice, what that happens is once the order is served, it is deemed to be served to every institutions. And we have seen KEPRA issuing directives to sometimes at around midnight. You privy to that, isn't it? So and let me tell you something. Let me also advise Mushendo and tell him when it comes to issues law, court orders knows no weekends.
Sure.
It doesn't know any night. That is why if Mushendo didn't know, courts operate even on weekends, including on a Sunday. You can get an order.
No,
let me take it down.
I think when it comes to court orders and how court operates, I would gladly get informed by a learned friend. But not on the interest of Konya and what he believes. I choose not to head to that argument.
So what are you trying to insinuate?
I'm
that
trying to insinuate
if the court order comes at 4 p.m.,
that this is the thing. Neither of us here are authority in law.
Not me.
You see, we are not authority in law. We already have a disagreement on whether court operates on weekends or not. I think it's only fair because we are talking from a political perspective. The only person who can authoritatively declare that this can happen or not is a lawyer who is not present here. And I do not want to, for the benefit of myself and those who listen to me, I don't want to heed to Ikonya's advice because it might be politically instigated to prove his point and why what he said.
It was my turn.
So,
last time I checked, it was my turn.
Let him explain.
You listen.
But not him purport to advise.
No, you listen. Linda, if an activity is bound to happen on a Sunday, and you need to bar it from happening, you can even get an... There is always an officer in every court. That Kenyan should know. You can get an order, and then there's so many ways of doing that. So what I'm saying...
And I might need to remind... okay, well, I don't know. From the times he began this, Okiya Omtata is an engineer. And not perhaps a
what Mushendo is not
he has got into that space.
Is not
I'm trying to tell you that
I am not even
he's not a lawyer. He's not a lawyer.
Can I tell you what I am saying is as he gets his turn, I don't have a problem with Okiya Omtata because even the bit of the law that we understand it's not because we are lawyers.
Yes.
But I know Ikonya to be clear. He has been my majority leader in my county. I understand it very well. I cannot trust his words right now to be the truth.
Can you trust Benji?
At least Benji, he is honest enough. But Ikonya, I've been in one side with him. I know how he operates when he is honest. I know how he operates when he's queer.
Are you in the business of dismantling?
No, not dismantling.
Not the business.
It is because Ikonya, I have told you, I respect him. He has been majority leader. And I happen to know the story of Ikonya, where he has come from. I have tremendous respect for him.
Linda.
But I also know he's a political being like me. He would actually come up with things that do not exist.
Would you give me my space?
You have your space. You have your space, Mheshimiwa. You have your space.
And without you, I mean, Mushendo, I want to tell you, we are live on TV. And it's good to have some decorum.
He's almost fighting here.
Yes.
Proceed.
We are live on TV. And Mushendo knows that I've been to court so many times, including against the county government of Kiambu in so many occasions. And I've personally taken myself. I've been an Okiya Omtata of Kiambu, and he knows that. So I've litigated in court. So I'm not saying things that I've not done. I remember in the 2012-2013 finance bill during the Kabogo time, I was one of the people who led the people of Kiambu to court against the finance bill of Kiambu. So,
and even against the BBI.
And even against the BBI. So I've been there. I've been in that space, I know. So two things. I wanted to tell Mushendo, they could not have waited for money. They could have done it right there and then. Because there's a court order that has come in place, and these are government officers, and they would have issued an order right there and then that we can't raise the prices because an order has come forth. Number two, what Mushendo alluded to in terms of this government found. From where? Where was this government? Did it come from Uganda or from Rwanda? We're talking about leaders who were in the past government, including the deputy president, who now ascended to be a president, who was in that government, and as my brother alluded to here, is that he would receive intelligence on everything. We're talking about the leader of majority, who is the current leader of majority, used to sit in the committee on, it was actually the chair budget. So we're alive to, the economic situation of a country. So when we now stand and tell Kenyans that tulikuta hakuna kitu, you're being dishonest.
Yeah.
You are there. You knew hakuna kitu, hakukuwa na kitu.
So
when you
by
make these
surprise.
promises, you knew the economic situation of that country then. You see, that's the truth.
Yeah.
So when we're making declaration in terms of spelling out our manifesto in terms of what we're going to do, we knew there was nothing. So we would have made promises that, and I agree with Mushendu 100%, a country can only grow via taxes. The only thing Kenyans are asking is taxes in a commensurate way to what we are earning and our current state of living. If you look at Osolo, for example, the other day he went for a match in Gusii Stadium. Remember that story? And what did that? Because I must tell Mushendu, I am the #1 supporter of this government. Right. And I've decided to support them by telling them the truth of what is happening. I will tell the king you are naked. And what is happening on the ground. That is why I was baffled yesterday when I was telling you I saw Ruto trying to address the young people of Molo. And no one is lifting. I mean, it's really unfortunate. Silvanus Osoro the other day went for a match and they was told, this match will not happen on here. You go and cheer a team called Finance Bill FC in Nairobi. Go back. That is how things are on the ground.
Well,
all right?
Yes.
So we must be alive to those things. We must not close our eyes on those things. And we must tell them as they are. That is the only way we can help this government. Because they become blind to so many things. The Kimani Ichung'was who every day, champest, and the other day was hurling insults on me and on Parliament. I mean, because of saying the truth.
Okay, fair enough.
It's really unfortunate.
Allow us to take a quick short break and then we come back still talk about the court orders. Yeah?
To put things on record, a good lawyer of mine has been courteous enough to send me the High Court practice and procedure rules. And
can we read those ones after this break?
Because just one. Practice and procedure rules of the courts. That is for the hours during which the office of the High Court and other court, including registries, shall open to the public shall be from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., Monday through Friday. Exactly.
And the court, do you know what time this was released?
You see, what we are saying is, he's saying that he's saying that the EPLA could have actually withdrawn the new prices, but it is also
where does the registry and EPLA and the court order?
Let's take a short break and then come back with that. All right. We're back. We're back. We're back. We are back. And yes, you were reading what it is that your lawyer friend has sent us. Before we come back to you, let's loop in Benji, who's been quiet for a while now. Benji, court orders after court orders after court orders to perhaps not curtail, but legally, stop the proceedings of the Kenya Kwanza government. We're talking about the CAS's court order that, stopped them from assuming office, in as much as many of them, as many would argue, have been in office and, working as should have expected of them. We get to know their fate today, but at the same time, we're looking at that court order that was accorded on Friday. And some people would want to ask, are they on a mission to curtail the activities of the government? And how much do they damage the plans of the Kenya Kwanza government if it's going to be that way?
You will find my answer very interesting. And remember, my background is in activism, apart from, business studies in university when I came to the scene. I hate to say this, but the CAS was a lazy invention of Uhuru, who of course had scant regard for the constitution. So basically, Uhuru, who is a former KANU chairman, envisioned assistant ministers and also, things to reward, cronies and losers, just the same way they take political losers and stuff them in Kenya Airways in the board, which then leads, of course, to incompetent people running the national airline in a manner that has led to the kind of mess you see today, the kind of losses and what have you. And so the reason I'm saying that you'll find my answer interesting is because I really believe in wholesome change and radical change. But unfortunately, the fact that the top cream of leadership in this country are all ex-KANU. That is the president, that is former President Ruto, that is former Prime Minister Raila. I mean, these are all, so they have KANUism in their blood. And I believe that this is the motivation that leads to all this sense of impunity and dysfunction, because KANU's legacy was an unbelievable legacy of bereftness, by the time Moi left power, this country was a hollow shell of its former self. And so sometimes I want us to temper our expectations. We shouldn't even be having any discussion on CAS. I didn't think William Ruto would put forth CASs. I mean, he's trying to run something contrary to Uhuru. To the fact that he would even consider this tells you that William Ruto, Uhuru Kenyatta is just, in a sense, more of the same, or a continuation of the same. And that reality in itself is very troubling, to say the least.
Peter Moshendo, Malala in cabinet, and David Ndii, and Harriet Chigai, and Monica Juma. And then it reminds us of Alice Wahome, who challenged the incorporation of Badi, in joining the sittings of cabinet. Does it justify what it is that Benji speaks of?
Well, when it comes to the CAS, the CAS position, regardless of political views about it, is a creation of Public Service Commission. And if you look at the responsibilities of the Public Service Commission in Article 234 of the Constitution, as read together with the Public Service Commission Act of 2017, you would realize that the Article 234(2)(a) says that the Public Service Commission has the responsibilities of abolishing and creating possession. Yeah. Of course, this is subject to public participation. And in this case, I have always been one of the people who have cried most about the derailed public participation bill in Parliament that would allow this country to actually define exactly to the letter what is public participation. But in the absence of that particular law, the Public Service Commission went ahead and invited members of the opinion to bring their views and opinion on the matter. And they concluded that after hearing the public, they are satisfied that that particular position of the CAS is important and it is of paramount importance to the relevant State Department. Now, those that have gone to court have gone to sort, number one, whether the Public Service Commission has the authority to do it. Others have argued that there was no meaningful public participation. And if you look at the decision by Justice Odunga, funny enough, that decision was rendered on a case which I and Ikonya, who are the leading petitioners in that particular issue on the public participation done on the Kiambu County Finance Bill of then, during Kabogo's time, as much as he defined in his own terms what public participation was, that decision was also related to the National Assembly and the Senate coming up with the proper guidelines and determining the public participation. In fact, the decision by Justice Odunga was more or less based on the behavior of that particular county government. And in the absence of the Public Participation Act that ought to be enacted by Bunge, which I'm disappointed they have not given it priority, the Public Service Commission could only ask members of the public to bring memoranda, to bring their opinion, and then scrutinize it and come up with an acceptable parameters of whether we need that position or not. And those are the things that ought to be determined in a few minutes from now. But politically, we just want to make this a whole political issue. But what is being delivered today in court is not really about the politics of those positions. It is whether those positions are merited by law or not. And I believe that we have given our high courts the authority to interpret the Constitution. They will determine whether the Public Service Commission went above and out of their mandate, whether they followed the due process of public participation. For me, the rest is just political rhetoric that do not add value to this particular case. If the courts find that the Public Service Commission is within its right to do it, so be it. If they find it to be otherwise, I pray and hope that the government gets to comply or alternatively seek a legal redress as provided by our laws.
Mheshimiwa. And I know we can't speak much to this, like Mushendu
Malala in cabinet. Malala in cabinet, if you ask me, as you rightly...
Malala in cabinet, CASS...
As you rightly put it, that Wahome 10, the current CS for water, called out, on Uhuru Kenyatta in terms of the people they brought in cabinet. What constitute cabinets and what do cabinet do? That is a question that all of us need to look into. Because when you bring in people to cabinet who are not what is defined as the actual composition of a cabinet, the question you need to ask yourself is, what are they bringing into cabinet? For example, look at David D. He's an economist and has a lot of political, economic knowledge. But the question is, would you advise an entire government on economic matters in a single cabinet sitting? I guess no.
Yeah, no.
Because I want to believe that when cabinet is coming together, if there are economic issues that need to discuss, these are things that need to have researched on and sat down and discussed, so that what they're bringing into cabinet are resolutions from individual ministries and probably from the Office of the President, Office of the Deputy President, having consulted. You don't need to bring this consultant into the meeting because it's a meeting that happens for a couple of hours, just a couple of hours. And it is not much in terms of making, either a political and economic decision or those things. So I want to believe, to me, if you ask me, they should not be in cabinet, if you ask me.
Okay.
Because I believe when you get into cabinet, of course, there are goodies that comes with it, of course. So that's an expense on us.
Okay.
Let's go to the CSS.
Interesting. CSS, okay.
And let's go to the issue of public participation. I quite agree with my good friend Peter Mushendu in terms of Parliament having derailed in terms of passing that law. Because public participation is, the only precedence that we have in public participation is on Justice G.V. Odunga. But I would tell Mushendu it was not on the Kiambul aspect, but it defined public participation as enshrined in the Constitution. And it is very detailed. Actually, that is where now the issues of public participation really started coming up based on that ruling and that judgment. It is, the court declared these seats illegal. We should honor the court. And actually what we did is we did not even do what Uhuru had done. We doubled it. We more than doubled the number, which again, Kenyans are saying is a tax burden. I mean, it is a burden on them. So I would hope that the court will be prudent enough this morning to declare those seats illegal and have those people go home.
Interesting. It will be something that we follow up on closely to give you updates on the same. And so at this very point, gentlemen, we are about to wind up. So I'll accord you the chance to give us your parting shots, even as we await that ruling, even as we await to see what then, the government will do. That is in reaction to the Okiya Omtata case, as well as, what Moshedo says, maybe it is time that EPRA then will take an about turn. Who knows? So, Benji, we begin with you.
Thanks again for having me, Linda, this morning. I continue to be very grateful to TV47 for just the opportunity to have very robust and very honest discussions. It's not about posturing one way or the other. I have a lot of colleagues that are watching, and we're really trying to mold a messaging and a strategy also for the new government in place, without being sycophantic, without being subjective, without being sensitive, without being extremely personal. And so I really just want to extend some gratitude also to my brother Peter here for acknowledging that indeed when I do this, I come from a very noble place, a very good place for the betterment of the country. Same thing with former majority leader Kiambu here, Mheshimiwa, that it's not about being static. It's not about just towing the line. It's also about speaking truth to power. It's about acknowledging that you can change your mind as you move forward, and always advocating for the better, for the betterment of the country, for better opportunity for the people, so that our people are not going to bed hungry, are not suffering unnecessarily 60 years after independence. And having said that, therefore, I must reiterate that we have a problem with the economy. We cannot talk our way out of it. We cannot borrow our way out of it. We cannot engage in endless blame game. It is for us now to have the discipline to put down measures, strict measures, that ensure relief and respite for Mama Mboga. The government also must have adequate discipline to do enforcement, to do implementation of policy in a very quick fashion. As I said, we don't have a lot of time. If by 2026 we're still struggling our way around, it'll be a shame, but at least they'll say, Benji told us.
Yes, of course, the president's clock is ticking. That is without doubt.
Yeah.
So what he does by the time it's 2026 is likely what is going to determine his fate, if at all he will have the interests. And I think there's one of the articles here that speaks to his plans to get into the home turf of the Right Honorable Raila Odinga, that is in Nyanza. And so he should be understanding that very well.
Well, they say that time is the equalizer of everything. And in time, we will see what happens. And as my parting shot, I will say that even as we await the decision by the courts in just a few, that I still disagree with my brother saying that the president is acting out of his legal mandate, because if you read Article 132 of the Constitution, subsection 4, it gives the president the authority to establish a public office in accordance with advice from the Public Service Commission. And I think in this case, the president executed his legal mandate within the confines of the law. But again, we have established the high courts as the court that are given the mandate to interpret our constitution. And we look forward to see the decision that they come up with. And as I said, the Kenya Kwanza government is a government that is looking forward and is willing to obey court orders. And just because the EPRA thing was not effected over the weekend, does not mean that, because it is true, the courts have suspended the 2023-2024 finance bill, and any authority given therein under that particular act cannot purport to take place until such a time either the government appeals on the decision on that particular law is actually rendered. So I believe that the government, being a working day to day, is going to do what is expected of them in accordance with the law.
Well put, Mheshimiwa.
Yeah, I think I'll wrap it up by also reminding my good brother that every institution under the law, including the presidency, when you give them powers to do something, to even create institutions and offices, then you should do it under the Constitution, within the defines and confines of the Constitution. That is what the law requires. So I'll wrap it up by saying, in as much as we've talked on national issues, I also reside in a county called Kiambu. So I would wrap it up by saying a couple of things about Kiambu.
Yeah.
One, something that I'm very passionate about. There's a project that I started called the Kiambu Bus Park. And I can see that the governor of Kiambu, Governor Matangi, has gone back to that project and is doing a pretty nice job behind the post office. Kiambu. So it was a project that I left halfway. But they've picked it up. They're doing a very nice job because the Matatu fraternity deserves a decent place. And you know, the businesses around that deserves a decent place. So I want to applaud Governor Matangi for that. I also want to applaud him for the second phase of the bursary. So predominantly, if you ask me, he's doing a pretty good job. So that's why I said I'm a very objective person. I want to tell the truth and I want to tell people what is happening. So in as far as Kiambu is concerned, I am satisfied. I've heard that we're doing roads, including to the interiors of Kiandutu.
Right.
And I've seen roads being done all over the county. So I want to applaud Governor Wamatangi for a job.
If there's a person who doesn't
done.
agree with what it is that Wamatangi is doing right now, a person who campaigned for him, is this man here. So I think also...
I think he's trying. That's what I hear. I have family in Kabete.
Well, he will argue...
I would say, without blinking my eyes, Ikonya is pitching for a job in the county because, yes, that particular bus park he's talking about, that particular bus park he's talking about, Linda, that particular bus park he's talking about is illegally acquired, and he knows it.
But let me ask you, let me ask you this. Ikonya was vouching for the current government, and then he's changed his position. You are vouching for Governor Wamatangi. You have changed your position on that.
What's wrong with our culture, political culture?
No. What I am saying, it is within his democracy and democratic confines to change tunes, because I also do change tunes. But let's not sit here and praise the governor who has absolutely no idea why he was elected the Kiambu governor. At least I would be proud to say that Ikonya, when he was the MCA, he has done some things for Kiambu Township. That is a fact. You cannot deny that. It is true. Whether that bus park was illegally acquired or not, he actually did good with dealing with the traffic that was in Kiambu. That, as far as what Ikonya did as the MCA and the majority leader of Kiambu, I have tremendous respect for him. But I will not sit here and listen to Ikonya lie to the public that the governor is doing exactly. This is the governor who gave bursaries 5 months later than the time it was supposed to be given.
I didn't know that.
This is the truth. This is the governor who has brought health services in Kiambu to its knees, and he knows that for a fact, because I worked hand in hand with him to elevate the services, the health services of Kiambu. He knows where it is. And I challenge TV47 not to take Ikonya's word for it. Send your reporters
to the ground.
And find out the facts.
Linda,
fair enough.
Linda, I think as I wind it up, it's really unfortunate that things that I can see with my own eyes. Things that I can see with my own eyes. And I will, after this show, I'll inform him on how that land was then acquired by the county and the payments thereof. And it's something that I can see. It's in my town. It's in my town. It's something that I was passionate about doing. So we did half of it. I am saying Governor Matangi is doing a perfect job in doing the other bit of it. You know, that is something I can see with my own eyes. I've had parents talk about bursaries. You know, whether it was issued a little bit late, he has now issued the second phase of that bursary. You know, things that we never did. We would issue a bursary of probably 1.4 million per ward. He has now gone to about 3 million per ward. I mean,
Ikonya,
this is not theoretical.
Ikonya, you must not talk about...
If there are political promises that has not been fulfilled to...
You see, and I'm looking...
Then he should not drag them here. Me, I don't want any work.
I am telling you...
For the record, I don't want any job at the county.
I'm telling you for a fact, and I'm saying this live. Today, as of today, Kiambu Bursary Fund has only disseminated 100 million. And that's a fact. And I'm not wrong. In a country of 2.7 million people, invite me next week, and I will tell you how much money we have returned to Treasury. In a county that has over 100 health institutions.
Last week,
and I'm telling you,
as to how much the counties.
Invite me next week, and I will tell you.
I will now wrap it.
How much money?
Finally,
how much money we have returned as a county?
Benji, do not act like
no, Linda.
Our county cannot be a county of repair works only. We have to do new projects.
Close it.
I've told you this statement again.
Anyway, I wish him well in pitching for his job.
The reason why we see county remitting money back to the national government is a problem that I've discussed in this show many times. Is because of a late disbursement by the national government of funds to the counties. To the extent that once you release money, for example, on the 15th of June, and you expect that money to be consumed by 30th of June, and then the system clogs. You can't to process a single transaction takes you about an hour or two. So that is why it is a problem with every county. And I want to tell the Kenyans, when you hear that your county has returned money, it's not.
Ikonya, I beg you in the name of God. No. Do not insult our integrity. There are counties that had already put the processes.
We have the list. We have the list.
Immediately they received the money from the national government. That was almost a month ago. They put it into good use. In Kiambu, we have people who have done business with the county we have not paid. If we could not channel that money to actually do development,
and I talked about
we could have rewired that money to pay the people we owe money.
Anyway,
but we talked about control of budget.
It is clearly lack of disrespect to the people of Kiambu to have money returned to Treasury.
Governors get money. Governors get money for pending bills, then they pay their own friends. We talked about it.
But also, the president has given an order for,
invite us here to talk about Kiambu some other day, and we will come with the facts here on the table. So let Ikonya not lie to you that...
You cannot channel money that was meant for development or meant for a particular purpose.
So he has to go back.
You can't say.
Can I tell you, Linda, as you find out. Let me tell you. Last week, when the national government realized it could not use some money for some certain development, they brought a final supplementary budget. Almost on the final. The president last week ascended, you remember, to a second supplementary budget by Kenya Kwanza to reroute the money they could not use for development for this particular thing to another thing. There is nothing that stopped Kiambu from reallocating the money they could not spend on development to pay pending bills. But it is simple. The Kiambu governor is a one-man show. It does not hit to advertise. That is why we are returning money to Treasury, and I am ashamed. In a county of 2.7 million people and 6 awards.
Well, let me just quote Control of Budget,
Yes.
Margaret Nyakango. What Control of Budget was saying, her investigations have shown that when governors apply for funds for pending bills, they receive those funds, even if it's in part. But then they divert those funds into a different schedule of payments compared to the schedule that they had brought. In other words, if you are more connected, if you're a relative of the governor, etc. And therefore, the problem was, I'm quoting the Control of Budget, not myself. So the problem of pending bills has continued because, you see, pending bills also impacts the economy.
1 year after Kiambu pending bill is still at the same price.
Exactly.
And somebody has the audacity to come and...
The money has come, but you have not paid.
But Mushendu's factor not.
We have to...
You see, I do not expect Wamatangi to perform magic. I don't expect him to be a magician.
Sure.
But I expect him to do things that are showing me he is heading somewhere.
It is proper for us to allow...
What did Wamatangi get? Because there is even dark color.
No, but let them.
It's become more black.
Let them.
Thank you
like
so much.
It's personal.
It is only fair. It is only fair that sometimes we have such conversations that I think
And it's
is
sometimes
quite
just
healthy,
passion.
because then what is happening in Kiambu is probably a replica of what is happening in other countries.
I'm hoping I can get these two gentlemen
But this
back in.
was a nice fetch.
You have
This is a very
you
nice
have to
fetch.
discuss something. No, there's a place you can go and have some coffee somewhere around here. Bayo has plenty of coffee.
Yeah, not a fight.
Well, now we are no weekend.
Well, last speaker.
Thank you. We are good friends. I tell you.
Honorable Anthony Konya, thank you so much for speaking to us this morning.